Greetings, this is Indio Mayor Glenn Miller. I'm honored to have Indio Police Department Chief Michael Washburn here with us today. Chief, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity.
Well, I'm looking forward to discussing the Indio Police Department. We're masked up here, we're a little bit social distancing, and we're going to talk about your Indio Police Department.
Tell us a little bit about the 21st century policing. How did the city of Indio, in terms of it, implement it?
Well, to be honest, one of the core things about 21st century policing is that strong tie to the community. And that really is in Indio Police Department's DNA. They've been doing that for well over 30 years, probably beyond that. I just can't find anybody that old to tell me. So the vast majority of our folks live in the city. You know, they're coaching our kids in soccer, in baseball. They're involved in schools and in civic organizations. And so that is one of the reasons that actually the employees of the police department, not the leadership, settled on our motto, which is our community, our commitment.
And one of the great honors of it, we were only one of 15 departments in the nation that was picked to be able to do this program by the Obama administration, President Obama. And at the same time, we were able to go up to Washington, D.C. And I mean, to be one of, how many police forces are there in the United States? And to be one of 15 is amazing. That tells you something.
There's roughly 18,000 police departments or law enforcement agencies in the U.S. That includes sheriff's departments, the federal agency as well. So just a little under 18,000. The core of American policing is really that tie to community. It's really based on the father of modern day policing, which is Sir Robert Peel. Back in the 1800s, he actually, it's almost our motto. It's the public are the police and the police are the public. And that's the foundation of what works. We know that. It gives officers more of a guardian mentality, not an occupying force. A little easier to do in a close, tight-knit community like Indio is. But at the end of the day, we're just one of 15 departments that applied for and then finally were accepted to be a model agency for how to implement the 59 recommendations.
Well, I can't be more proud of our department of men and women that serve us on a daily basis. And with your leadership, we have a great team. How many police officers do we have in our community? How many are sworn? And then, you know, obviously we have support staff like anyone. You have to have a great staff to give them the information that they need. And what are we doing about recruiting individuals to come into the Indio Police Department family?
Well, one of the game changers for us. So first of all, we have 81 authorized sworn. We're not quite there yet. We've done a great job with hiring and recruiting. Since my arrival, we revamped our hiring and recruiting to be much more academically vetted processes, so much more reliable. If we were ever challenged in court, then we have the academic studies to show that this is a fair process and it's selecting for the things that we want to select for. As you're aware, the city manager and council has authorized us to move forward with sponsoring people to the academy. And that's been a game changer for me, for our department. It allows us to recruit much more locally. The academy is roughly a 6-month process. And so there aren't many people who can afford to quit their jobs and put themselves through a 6-month academy with no income, paying for commuting and all that kind of stuff, plus the cost of the course itself. And so it's allowed us to reach in, grab military veterans. We're actually talking to an Indio resident who's serving in the military. He's currently in Mississippi. And we're very close to hiring that person. He wants to come home. But if it were not for the ability to put him through the academy on the city's dime, then we would not be able to hire that guy. He would have to literally put himself through.
Well, I love that we're looking at homegrown individuals because there's so many opportunities from our city and our communities around us that we can take individuals that want to get into police department, division, field, in any aspect of it. There's so many other divisions life team, to our resource officers at our schools, to code enforcement, and to support staff. So I'm excited that we're doing that, and it's an opportunity for the city of Indio to invest back in our community. A safe city is one of the most vital aspects of our job as city council members, is to have a safe and successful community, and it starts with public safety. So thank you for what you're doing. And
Thank you.
Please let them know. There's other aspects that we're looking at. We have resource officers that we work with the Unified School Districts on. There's our quality of life team where we work on nonprofits. There's so many other things that Indio Police Department does to have the quality of life for our individuals. Can you touch on a little of those and
Sure.
some of our associations? Because it isn't us by ourselves. It's a group of us working as a team through our community.
Sure. So we're very involved in the community. We do a lot of work with our youth. In fact, a little show and tell in 2017, December 2017. This is Indio. We were featured on the cover of Police Chief magazine for our efforts in community building, and that's probably our turkey bowl that we do annually, as you're aware. And so there's an article that we wrote. It was selected actually out of that article. The president of the International Association of Chiefs of Police reached out to me, placed me on his trust committee. We came out with NFL folks and had a meeting in Arlington, Virginia. So very proud of the community building that we do. I mean, we have a laundry list of things we do with the parenting project. We have our school resource officers. You know, one of my frustrations today is you see cities that are saying we don't want our cops in the schools anymore. Well, they're not really there to arrest people. Yes, they're there for safety purposes, but at the end of the day, when you look at what our school resource officers do, they only are, my school resource officers only make an arrest about every 90 days in the school, and those are generally for weapons issues. But at graduations, you know, they're at the graduations, football games, etc. And these school officers, they're mentors, they're friends, they're a parent figure many times for these folks, life coaches, and even the teachers and staff will talk to them about private issues, and officers help guide through there. So it's one of the strongest components. It's a component of community policing, and so my fear is nationwide I see this call for getting the police out of doing that kind of stuff for fear that it's a pipeline to prison for inner city youth. It's actually the opposite. It builds that rapport, it builds that trust, builds those relationships. It allows them to see police officers in a non-enforcement role. One of the issues, which was the subject of my master's thesis, was just the trust in police and why do we always have this crisis that comes around? And it's really because the vast majority of folks don't have contact with police officers. And so their experience is only through what you see on the TV, what you see in the movies. And so we're viewed very one-dimensionally. I mean, we will go through an entire shift, doesn't happen very often, but we can go through an entire shift and not make a single arrest. At the end of the day, we're trying to get voluntary compliance. And we're not really trying to create a criminal background for people. We're trying to solve the issue, and that's really the core of what a Guardian compassionate police department does.
And so, in one of our other associations that we work a lot with is our quality of life team. The city of Indio has invested millions of dollars in resources to continue to help those in need on the streets, also to help those individuals that want help, from veterans to seniors to youth. It's just not us doing it. It's a great association of local nonprofits, the county of Riverside, mental health. Tell us a little bit about that, because they work tirelessly each day to go into areas that normally would be forgotten.
So we have 3 quality of life officers. They're the most compassionate and patient people I've ever met. They don't give up on people, and so they will approach a person in a bad situation, generally homeless, and they will approach them repeatedly. Hey, can we just get you over to the mission for a meal and a shower? What we're after, the goal is to get their life back on track and have them really get the fullness out of life that they deserve. And so we have a number of folks, a small number, that are kind of, we would call them service resistant. It's really their chosen lifestyle. And so those are the really difficult folks to deal with. You know, it's generally a drug issue, mental health, or a combination that keeps them in that zone. But for someone who's lost their job and is homeless because of that, those are the easy cases. We can help those people, connect them to resources. As you're aware, we were the recipient of $1.9 million state grant for the work we do. It's based on our CORE, which is Community Outreach Resource Program. And that is a collaboration of defense attorney, it's our district attorney, all of our service providers, probation, and we talk about what issues are for the clients, and we get them programming, we get them squared away, and then the last thing to graduate from that core program, kind of the final, I guess, barrier to independent living is to clear their fines and fees. So a lot of these folks have gotten, you know, repeated fines for driving without a license, et cetera. So the court's involved in our program, and so we together, the DA and the police department and the defense bar, we approach the court and say we all in agreement that justice in this case means dismissing all those fines and fees. And so that allows them to then get their driver's license, because at the end of the day, returning them to work is what we're trying to do.
Keep them on their feet, yes, absolutely.
And you've been to those graduations.
Yes,
I mean,
I
they're very emotional. You hear incredible stories of recovery, and about half of our graduates don't attend because they're at work, and that's okay.
It's very good.
Yes.
It is. And then one last thing that I want to bring up, and then I'll let you kind of end with what you want everybody to
Sure.
know. Tell us about your Chiefs Council. It's your advisory group that comes in. You are the one that came up with the idea to bring in citizens from different areas of our community to be able to advise you on things that you hear, and then you to also tell them things that you're planning and how you're changing the department to make it better. And I think there isn't any more of an opportunity to talk to you. You're always available, but at this group, I mean, everything's on the table, and you've always made that known. How'd you come up with that, and give us a little idea of what it is that you're doing?
So really, it's a combination of things. It's to continue to engender trust in the community, but also provide a way for the community to guide us in how we should be policing Indio. What are the things? I mean, we've brought the tattoo policy, which is just need to know what our citizens think about. Is it okay now that you see more tattoos on our officers or not? They looked at our immigration policy. We've talked about use of force issues. And so it is a direct route for us to bounce ideas off of different segments of the community. It's a pretty diverse group. We're actually going to be adding some youth folks to it as soon as the coronavirus allows us to. But we were in the process of looking at a youth component and kind of reinvigorating that board. We're not looking for yes people, we're looking for the diverse opinions and different perspectives, because we want to police the way Indio wants to be policed. And so there's not many departments that do that allow them to actually dig into their policies, make suggestions, and so that's a really good way, again, for police or the community have a voice in the type of police department they have.
Well, that's what we've always been. We've been transparent from the start. Our Indio Police Department, our city officials, we're always looking at what we can do to make things better. We want input from our community. We have all kinds of outreach meetings with town halls. We're in with our churches to make sure that their voices are heard through our communities. So I commend you and the rest of the city council for all you're doing. I know everything's under your website. You're available along with the rest of your staff and officers to talk to anybody or any group. I want to thank you, and I'll just give you the final floor to say anything that you want to do about your men and women that work for you and what your goal and obligations are and what you're doing to make sure that we get through this all together.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. Well, first of all, I would encourage everyone to read the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing. If you just Google it, it will come up. It talks about the 6 different pillars. Policy and oversight is just one of them. Oversight's very important. As you're aware, the first ask that I had when I got here 4 years ago was, I need more supervisors. And so council's been very good, has always accepted those recommendations and has been supportive and allowed us to move forward with the things that I knew made sense. And so added supervisors, so policy and oversight's one of them. I can go through a quick laundry list just so people get a feel for the 6 pillars. You know, building trust and legitimacy, that's where the transparency comes in. It's really, again, in our DNA. We want, we are your neighbors. And so that's one of the big differences between us and a large city. In my previous city, Seattle, the vast majority of employees couldn't afford to live in the city. And so they all commuted in. And so the investment's not quite as much. I mean, you're not talking about taking care of your neighbors, you're talking about taking care of a city that you leave every day when you go home. Policy and oversight, we've already mentioned that. I reviewed all of our high-risk policies before I even arrived. Was reading a few on the plane when I was coming down. When I first got here, we changed 116 policies in my first year here. And then we've spent, a good organization doesn't wait for a crisis, is really my point. So knowing the things that it takes, knowing the 21st century policing well, we wanted to make sure that we were plugged into all those things, doing all the right things. Really the only thing I imported from the Seattle Police Department was its use of force review. And so it is the way we report force, the way it's investigated by the supervisor, and then the way it's reviewed, all the way up to and including me. And so no one is allowed to whiff on any issue. So if you see an issue, it needs to be addressed and you need to tell me how it was done. And so we get down to tactics. Is there any, are we okay with the tactics? Are we okay with where they get equipment failures? And so the supervisors has to comment on each and every one of those things. And so it is, that's what kind of creates a culture where everyone's so in tune with that. It's also a teaching mechanism because they have to articulate their legal purpose and legal authority and lawful purpose for using force in the first place. And so that needs to be in your mind before you even engage. So going down the list a little further, technology and social media. Technology's big, as you know. We are moving forward. We just did a kickoff to implement our new CAD RMS system that gives us performance metrics, allows us to, it's a much more stable system than the one we have. There's just a lot more features that you got today versus our 22-year-old system. Social media, the reason that's so big is to get our story out. Community policing and crime reduction. Again, community policing is really what Indio's been about for years. That's actually the toughest thing to teach because it's more of it's a perspective, it's an approach, it's really in the character of the people you hire and recruit. And so that's one of the things that we look for the fit for IPD. So when you look at recruiting, you will never see IPD showing SWAT teams and militarized police. We want you to know what you're getting in for. If you're going to work for us, community policing is what we do. Training and education is big. It's interesting, the comments about defunding the police. If you want to reform police, it's actually, you have to go the other way. A lot of people don't know on the West Coast are the best trained and the best funded police officers. Our police officers in California make 3 times what they make in Atlanta, for instance. And so you have to think about the differences and not judge police from what you see 2,000, 3,000 miles away from us. We're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but we're way more advanced, and I would really encourage people to investigate what the state of California has done, what the Chiefs Association has pushed for, legislation that is supported to include transparency and the rewriting of the use of force in California. We've already done those things. Again, we didn't wait for the crisis. And then officer wellness. We need to make sure our people are even-keeled, that they're supportive. We see horrendous things, and it's not just our officers, but our dispatchers. If you can imagine, I couldn't imagine being a dispatcher because they're hearing things on the radio and they can do nothing physically. And so the onus is on them many times to coordinate the response to an officer or a citizen who's in trouble. And so it's very stressful, and I just have a lot of admiration for our dispatchers. So, and so in the state of California, just as I mentioned it, and we'll finish off there, no-knock warrants are only supplied by a judge, and that's when the judge is convinced that it's actually the safest way to go, that a surprise entry is necessary. No one in the Indio Police Department believes we've ever done one. And so they're extremely rare in this state. We already have judicial oversight of that technique that's just not used very often in this state. Again, because of the advancements on the West Coast of really professionalizing policing.
Well, thank you, Chief, and thank you for being an open book. I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak out to our community. I'm honored as your mayor to be the person that works with you on a continual basis. Your department is dedicated, they're trained, they're compassionate, they're what we look for in a police department, and I'm honored to be the mayor of this city that has the Indio Police Department, the men and women that work daily to make our lives and our communities safe. So hopefully this will shed some light on the Indio Police Department so they know exactly some of what's going on, and they can always read. Everything's on indio.org or on your website for the police department, Indio Police Department. And we have our community information officer, Ben Gutron, who's always out in our community. So thank you for being an open book and being transparent on what's going on here in the city of Indio. And we're, like I said, very honored to have our men and women that serve us on a daily basis. And for everyone out there, we're looking at things that we're going to do. We got to continue as our numbers are rising. We got to flatten the curve. And so when you continue to have that opportunity, make sure, like you see here now, social distancing at all time. Make sure that when you're out in the community that you're wearing a mask, not for you and the ones you love, but those around you. We need to continue to fight this COVID-19. We need to coexist with it. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is to continue to follow the guidelines set down by the governor of the state of California. Continue to be safe, stay cool, and we'll talk to you again next week.